Hey everyone, Sylvia here. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the basics of objects. So we're going to cover what they are, how to use them, and how we can differentiate between bracket notation and dot notation to define key value pairs of objects. So let's begin. Alright, so if you haven't already pulled up the examples on the left, you can go ahead and do so in the link below in the description box, and we can get started. On the right side, I have the console tab pulled up in the developer tools, and we'll be focusing on some of these examples in here. So with objects, they are basically data structures. They are actually a data type, and these data types contain key value pairs. Key value pairs, let me type an example here, var test. So we're going to create a variable named test, and a key value paired is initialed within these curly braces, and with objects, we would have to store variables, in this case test, inside something called an object literal. And an object literal is, again, these curly braces that represent an empty object. And if we were to press enter here and go to type of test to see what kind of data type test is, we'll see that the data type object gets returned. So again, if we want to start creating objects, we're going to start assigning them an object literal in this fashion. With objects, there are two ways to create these key value pairs within objects, and those contain both a property and a value. And those are done through two things, dot notation or bracket notation. And I have this slide here pulled up that I created outlining when we would use dot notation compared to bracket notation. Dot notation, we would use it to define strings. And for bracket notation, as you can see on the right side here, we would use it for not just strings, but also weird characters like the ampersand or dollar sign, variables, numbers, expressions like functions. And we'll cover that more later. It's just good to understand the difference between the two and when to use one compared to the other. So focusing back here on the console, let's move into an example of dot notation. So we're going to type out variable fruit is equal to, again, here's the curly braces to define an object literal. And we're going to use dot notation on fruit dot basket and have that equal to the value of apples and press enter. So here really quickly, fruit is the object on the left side of the dot. And it's a good general rule of thumb. Whatever is on the left side of the dot, you can assume that that is the object that's being defined. Now, on the right side is the property. In this case, it's basket. So basket has a value called apples. And apples is, as I said before, I'm sorry, I just typed the answer. The type of apples will come off as being returned as a string. So here on the top, right here, we basically, in short, assigned a property with dot notation. As you can see, that's the dot that we used to assign that property. Now, if we wanted to access a property using dot notation, we would just go ahead and type, in this case, fruit.basket, which is the object name, dot, and the property name. And we'll see apples returned back. Now we can also store a property and use it later in our document or project or whatever we are working on in our JavaScript project. And by doing so, we can define another variable. In this case, we'll define variable cart and have that equal to fruit.basket. So here we have fruit.basket, that's being defined under the another object named cart. And if we were to type in cart, we'll see that apples is returned back, which is similar to what was outputted right above, which is fruit, with using fruit.basket. So this comes in handy down the line, but it does get trickier from here. If we were to, for example, want to change this value to oranges, and we did so doing fruit.basket is equal to oranges, like so, we would think that if we were to type out cart, we would get oranges returned, but we don't. And the reason being is because in order for cart to inherit the new value oranges, we're going to have to redefine this statement as fruit basket is going to be equaling oranges. So let's do this right now. So in this case, we have fruit.basket equals oranges. We have that changed. So now we have to go back again to cart and type that back in, because remember, we just changed this to oranges. So we press enter, and you'll see here that cart gets reassigned as oranges instead. Now we're going to move on to bracket notation. And here in bracket notation, it's similar to dot notation, except we're using brackets instead of a dot. So going on to a similar example right here, we're gonna do var fruit equals curly braces, again using an object literal to store these key value pairs. And we're gonna go ahead and type fruit brackets quotes basket equals apples. Again, this is similar to what we had typed originally above, which was fruit basket is equal to apples, right? We had used that originally with dot notation. However, here with bracket notation, instead of the dot, we're using the quotation and a bracket. So let's remove that and press enter to assign that. And now fruit basket is assigned the value apples. If we wanted to access this property with bracket notation, we'd go ahead and do fruit basket here, like so. And you'll see apples gets returned. Now, again, following the previous example with var cart and wanting to store this property in another variable, we would go ahead and create that, doing it in this fashion: fruit quotes basket semicolon. And you'll see here that if we type out cart, we'll get the value apples returned. So that pretty much covers the basics of using objects how to create objects, and how to assign these objects key value pairs using both dot notation and bracket notation. Again, I have the slide here pulled up for you to refer to, and you'll see that you can use dot notation to assign string values, or you can use bracket notation for a variety of different types or characters that you want to assign using bracket notation. It's really up to you as to what you need to do with objects, especially in object-oriented programming, and then you can decide which one is best for you to use in your circumstance. Other than that, if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know, and I hope to create more JavaScript tutorials down the road as I learn more and more about JavaScript. Hope that helps. Take care.